Hello everybody, welcome to today's webinar, Monetizing Wi-Fi Winning Strategies for MVNOs, brought to you today by iPass. I'm your speaker for today, Neil Griffiths. I head up product marketing at iPass. In terms of rules for today's webinar, please, if you've got any questions, please raise those via the chat window. Those will be answered in real time as we go through the webinar, and we'll respond to everybody's questions as we go through the deck. We're scheduled for an hour today. The slides should take a considerably shorter than that because we want to leave time for the questions which I'm sure you're all going to have around this fascinating subject about how to monetize Wi-Fi if you're an MVNO. So let's talk about the agenda for today. First off, we're going to talk about market trends and challenges for MVNOs. And then we're going to talk a little bit about who's iPass and what do we do. And then we're going to talk about how you can bring to bear some of the great technology and solutions that iPass has to allow you guys as MVNOs to fix some of the issues that we're talking about earlier on in the presentation around challenges that you guys may be facing. And then we'll wrap up and finish up the Q&A and follow up with any questions. All right, so let's talk about some of the challenges that we, iPass, believe that MVNOs are facing right now. Just as a little bit of background, we'll talk about this as we go through the deck. iPass currently has quite a few MVNOs as customers, and we'll talk about some of the applications that we bring to bear with MVNOs as we go through this deck. We have probably around 10 or 12 global MVNOs on our books right now, doing a whole variety of different solutions with iPass Wi-Fi. So we have a really good insight, we believe, in terms of what business challenges are being faced by MVNOs. Principally, the decline of voice calling in the MVNO base. MVNOs are becoming increasingly data-orientated as voice minutes tend to decline across the industry in general, and it would seem MVNOs in particular. And indeed, most people are really seeking to reach out to each other via instant messaging and database services rather than voice minutes right now. So a larger proportion of MVNO revenues and therefore costs is actually being driven from the kind of data side of the business rather than the voice side of the business. Now, this could represent a severe challenge to many MVNOs. We at iPass view this as actually a great opportunity for MVNOs to leverage the iPass service, and we'll talk about how you can do that to great effect a little bit later on in this deck. The world really is moving towards data as the principal method of communication on mobile devices, and this is being reflected in MNOs and MVNOs. What we tend to see is that our MVNO customers, their subscribers, seem to be leading this charge in terms of being principally data-only users, only kind of using voice when they really have to. So, as an MVNO, what does this mean to you guys? Well, you're constantly facing challenges around customer acquisition and retention. CAC, churn, and CCV are things that you guys live and die by, and we understand that through working with many MVNOs and MNOs. Specific to MVNOs, though, you guys are always trying to reduce the cost of your network. Because you're buying at wholesale rates from MNOs, you're always seeking to do network cost reduction. And previously, when your business was primarily voice minutes, that was always a kind of a tricky thing to do because it was really a volume-based discussion with your parent MNO. As more and more of your revenue transitions to data offerings, though, all of a sudden you now have some new options in terms of how you drive cost out of the network with regard to providing data services to your users. Obviously, as MVNOs as well, you're always seeking to differentiate away from the parent MNO and also from the other MVNOs that are in the marketplace. And we're seeing some really interesting stuff going on with some of the MVNOs that we're working with in various territories around the world in terms of how they're taking various products and solutions, including components from iPass, and really building those into some very innovative solutions to allow themselves to differentiate away from their competition with standardized offers, but also to really kind of go vertical, either from a demographic point of view or an application point of view, and grab complete new communities of users that the MNOs or other MVNOs may have overlooked. Also, as an MVNO, you're always facing challenges in terms of expanding coverage. It may be expensive for you to buy coverage from for out of area from your, the main MNO that you may be buying capacity from, and you're always seeking to figure out how to drive additional revenue out of customers that may be roaming outside your home footprint area. With the kind of changes in roaming charges in EMEA and some of the stuff that's going on with the larger US MNOs, it's kind of an open playing field now in terms of roaming services, whether you can actually make any money out of those services by buying capacity off or buying cellular data capacity off MNOs. It's also a very challenging product to actually managing all those roaming relationships and actually trying to keep everything in alignment there, making sure that your margins are maintained for these roaming users. So, on the basis of all the conversations that we have with MNOs, we think we have a really good understanding of the challenges that are facing you guys. I just want to spend a few minutes just talking about what iPass kind of does generally, and then we'll go to what specifically we can do for MVNOs to address the issues that we've just covered. So iPass, who is iPass? Well, we're the global mobile connectivity leader. We have a huge Wi-Fi network that basically spans the entire planet. We have about over 57 million hotspots right now globally. We cover 120 countries. We're partnered with about 160 different network providers. In terms of footprint, we're adding about 100,000 new hotspots a week, there or thereabouts. So we're galloping along in terms of network capacity. We reach pretty much everywhere where your users want to be, including some places that they never would have occurred that they could have service from us or ultimately from you guys, and that's including onboard aircraft, in the dark recesses of convention centres, some places where cellular isn't. iPass can provide connectivity. We've been around for about 20 years. We started out in the kind of dialer industry, not certainly the dialer industry, in the dial-up industry, providing roaming connectivity into dial-up ISPs for business travelers. And over the years, our business model has morphed, and now we're the global leader in Wi-Fi connectivity. We sell principally to enterprises, MNOs, MVNOs, and companies that seek to integrate our technology into their solutions to make them operate better. So we do a lot of work with loyalty and credit card companies, and there's an emerging trend that we're seeing around people integrating Wi-Fi into their applications natively, and also we're seeing a lot of interest in IoT solutions as well. We're actually doing a number of trials on our network right now, and I know that we did have at least one IoT MVNO register for this webinar, so if you're on, we're going to be talking about IoT solutions at a high level a little bit later on. But we are seeing a very interesting mix of people that are taking either iPass directly as a technology to make their users' lives better, or taking our technology to integrate into their solutions to make their users' lives better. And we'll talk a little bit about how that's achieved in the next few slides. So if you look at our footprint, we're kind of everywhere you need to be. I think this webinar was targeted largely at folks in North America, and we have great coverage in North America, superb coverage in Europe. We're ramping up coverage in Middle East and Africa. We have a big push in India right now. We just signed Reliance Telecom, which is going to add, I think that's like a couple of million hotspots in India, and we're pushing out into Australia and Oceania. We actually have pretty good coverage in South America. If you've been tracking iPass recently, we did a very interesting promotion recently with Uber in concert with those guys, and that was around the Rio Olympic Games, where we partnered with Uber to provide Wi-Fi connectivity for folks that were visiting the Rio Olympics for 3 weeks. So there's almost no continent in the world where we don't have great coverage. And that coverage is ever increasing, as I said, by around about 100,000 hotspots a week. So we're partnered up with a number of blue chip providers around the world. We have over 160 vendors. I think it's the thick end of actually 200 vendors right now. And we're partnered with all the kind of blue chip providers all around the world, including some really interesting in-flight partners like GoGo. And we've recently signed United Airlines, so we're going to be rolling out coverage on the United fleet, which is about 720 aircraft. And that's happening towards the end of this year or early next year. So great network, getting bigger, supported by lots of blue chip providers around the world. How does it work, right? What's the user experience? Well, we've done a lot of work in streamlining the user experience over the last couple of years, and it's really very, very cool now. If you sign up to the service and use the service, it's completely transparent in operation. Essentially, if the user has our client on their device, when an iPass hotspot, one of the 157 million plus hotspots is detected, the user's device will seamlessly connect that user onto that iPass hotspot. There's no credentials that need entering, there's no additional clicks or validations that need doing. They're just automatically connected. It's seamless, invisible, and transparent to the users. What we also do as part of the service is we really make sure that you can connect absolutely anywhere to any type of service. We have a mix of different connectivity options or footprint options within the platform. And we constantly are optimizing the user experience to pick which is the best quality hotspot that we can actually connect to wherever the user is. And sometimes, even though there may be a premium Wi-Fi hotspot provided by one of our vendors within range, we may actually choose to connect to a community Wi-Fi hotspot or a curated Wi-Fi hotspot, in preference sometimes to a premium Wi-Fi hotspot based on the QoS, the parameters that we run against the infrastructure in real time to determine which is the optimum connection for that user at that time, at that location. And we've been able to do that by building a very intelligent client and then supplementing that with a very powerful big data platform and back end, which is constantly crunching information about our network footprint and really allowing us to gain an understanding of what's the optimum hotspot to connect a user at any time, at any place where the user has access to our footprint. We also take security very, very seriously indeed. We are very, very careful about making sure that we weed out hotspots that may be fraudulent, that may be what we call false positives. We also allow encryption to be enabled on an ad hoc basis by the user, so that they can have an actually encrypted connection back out to one of our internet access gateways. And we also fully support corporate VPN integration, so that we can do things like force VPN activation when a user is ever connected to Wi-Fi, our Wi-Fi infrastructure. So the service from a user experience point of view is seamless, very easy to understand, no user interaction required, but it's also very, very secure, and we're always optimizing QoS at the same time. So it's kind of the best of all possible worlds. And in effect, what we managed to do is make Wi-Fi and a collection of 200 different Wi-Fi networks look, perform, and behave from a security and a QoS and a simplicity of consumption point of view pretty much exactly like an LTE network. And in fact, we can actually also do integration with cellular providers' networks on the back end to support things like ANDSF and EPSIM and a number of other different authentication and security mechanisms, so that we really can make the Wi-Fi network or our Wi-Fi platform look like an extension of an LTE network. So, what does that mean? What does that mean if you're an MVNO? Well, we'll talk about that in a second. You just want to touch on the iPass product stack, because this is where we start to talk about how you can take all this good stuff that we're talking about and actually integrate this into your solution. You can divide the iPass product stack up into three kind of broad areas. The first key component is Smart Connect. And that's a brand that we place against the intelligence and that lives within the client, and also the platform infrastructure that allows us to securely optimize the user experience for every single connection that happens on our network. It's a whole bunch of distributed intelligence. There's a whole pile of patents, probably over 60, that we actually have on this technology. Bit too much detail to go into during the course of this webinar, but it's a fascinating chunk of technology. The Smart Connect technology is available in our iPass's native client, which you've seen screenshots for. But the really cool thing that we've done over the last year or so is we've taken all that technology and we've integrated it into a client SDK. And that allows you to take all that connection intelligence and security and the access to the iPass footprint and embed it into any app that any one of our partners chooses to embed it into. So if you're an app developer or you're an MVNO or an MVNO, you can integrate our technology into your connection manager or your app and have seamless offload onto Wi-Fi, either off cellular or natively within your application. It's a great solution. It's very easy to integrate. We've had some developers take as little as 4 to 5 weeks from taking our SDK documentation to having a fully functional iPass Wi-Fi service embedded into their application. And that application leverages all the intelligence of our platform to optimize the user experience, just as though the user was using a native iPass application. A big component of the iPass product stack is verifying our big data analytics platform. The big data analytics platform is really what allows us to operationalize the network. So the clients, even the SDK components, are constantly vacuuming up information around the state of the Wi-Fi network and what hotspots can be seen by individual users and the QoS that users are experiencing. And all that is being stored into a huge data lake that we have and is being constantly analyzed to operationalize the network. What we've realized, though, is that data is pretty valuable in its own right. And so we're actually starting to bring to market some really interesting applications now where we're fusing the network capability or the connection capability with the big data analytics that we can provide on the back end. And we're bringing some very interesting solutions to market specifically around IoT. Those applications are around device tracking and device behavior, being able to control IoT devices, and the range and depth of different IoT applications is really quite surprising to us, and it's really a side of our business that's actually starting to ramp up very, 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 very quickly. So, what does this mean if you're an MVNO? What does all this good stuff and this technology and this great big footprint that we've got mean if you're an MVNO? Well, some subscribers we find really value Wi-Fi. In fact, some subscribers actually prefer to be on Wi-Fi when they're consuming certain applications rather than on the cellular network. A, for performance reasons, and B, sometimes for peace of mind. The users don't want to blow through data caps that they may have on their accounts. So having the ability to offer a seamless Wi-Fi service to your users is actually very, very compelling to some subscribers. And we tend to find that MVNO subscribers are much more receptive to this message than MNO providers. We're not sure why this is, whether it's the demographics that MVNOs tend to focus on, or it's just kind of one of those things, but we do tend to find that there's a strong preference for Wi-Fi within our MVNO community compared to MNOs. From your guys' point of view, from an operationalizing the network point of view, the ability to do seamless Wi-Fi offload is a great thing in terms of margin recovery. It gives you an alternative option for moving those very data-hungry users who are increasingly becoming more and more data-orientated and more and more, and the applications are becoming more and more data-heavy. Gives you a great option to offload those users off the macro cellular network or the LTE network and migrate those users to Wi-Fi. The billing options or the rating options that you've got on Wi-Fi, especially from iPass, are generally a lot more flexible than the rating options that you get from your MNOs. Whereas your MNOs are really just giving you bulk data, perhaps with a term and a volume discount, and kind of that's it. You're kind of paying by the drink. iPass has any number of different billing and rating options that you can kind of back to back into your user contracts to kind of de-risk you de-risk the option of being able to provide unlimited data for your users. And just to give you an example of that, most of our enterprise users that we sign up directly from iPass sign up to unlimited plans from iPass. And we've actually back-to-back those unlimited plans that we're offering to users out into our vendor contracts. So our network is not usage sensitive because we've actually renegotiated with most of our vendors. So we're able to offer to MVNOs flat rate pricing on a per user basis, which is great because it gives you guys a great deal of predictability around your costs. And it also allows you guys to offer unlimited data to your users without having to constantly sweat margin because you're paying on the other side on a per megabyte basis. Wi-Fi for MVNOs also unlocks a whole bunch of new revenue opportunities. There's every user that's out there, as well as their SIM-based device, they've probably got at least one, maybe two SIM-less devices, which they're looking to try and consume data on, which you could be bringing into a data plan and bundling in with the offerings that you're selling to them to give service to the SIM-based devices. So all those iPads and Surfaces and all the other devices that people are roaming around with, you can fold into those. You can fold into the data plans that you're offering to your users, and have those devices access our Wi-Fi network, branded as your service, and allow you guys to recover extra revenue or extra ARPU from each individual subscriber on the network. You've also got the ability to bundle in additional services, things like premium roaming for your folks that are traveling overseas. You can also bundle in things like in-flight access to the iPass Wi-Fi network. And this is all about driving extra ARPU out of your base by offering them a whole bunch of additional services that you really can't offer with the basket of services that you're getting from the MVNOs that you're working with right now. And bear in mind that your customers are using Wi-Fi, right? They are using Wi-Fi on aircraft and paying for it with credit cards. They're using Wi-Fi in coffee shops. They're using Wi-Fi for all these SIM-less devices. There's a whole pile of revenue out there, a whole pile of ARPU that you guys could be pulling in and bundling into your user contracts if you had the ability to offer Wi-Fi as an adjunct service on top of your cellular capability. From an IoT perspective, seamless Wi-Fi connectivity and big data analytics is becoming a really compelling story. We're seeing a big uptake in folks that we're working with around this right now, because they're figuring out that having an IoT device permanently connected to a cellular network and or running a GPS radio to report position and all that stuff is A, it's expensive, and B, it's expensive from a power consumption point of view as well. So people are trying to figure out that a low power Wi-Fi radio in an IoT device gives a lot longer battery life and is a lot cheaper, and they can get the same position information and same data and control of that device using Wi-Fi as they can from a cellular network, but with far, far lower costs. In addition, in terms of the IoT case, there are more options sometimes with Wi-Fi than there are with cellular. For instance, cellular doesn't perhaps reach into a big logistics center, or cellular doesn't reach into an aircraft, or cellular doesn't reach into a hospital. But more often than not, Wi-Fi is there in all of those places, so you can control and monitor IoT devices over Wi-Fi, sometimes a lot easier than they can over cellular. So examples of folks that we're working with right now, this is a very short list actually. The actual list, and this is all kind of pending press releases and stuff that's in the hopper right now. The actual list is probably about 10 or 12 MVNOs globally and rapidly increasing. The four that we're talking about today are Bezek in Israel, Telina in Europe, Mobilize in the UK, and Tata Communications in Montreal, I believe. And all of these are either classical MVNOs or consulting for MVNOs, or a couple of them are, or one of them at least is an MVNE. But they're all extremely active in the MVNO space. And all of these folks are integrating iPass SDK technology into their client solutions to allow either themselves or their customers to do seamless offload onto Wi-Fi infrastructure. and this is all around the reasons that I talked about earlier on. It's about margin recovery, it's about adding new services for their users, and also allowing their users to consume their service where cellular networks don't necessarily reach. So an example of 4 MVNOs there, and actually Mobilize is a consultant, an MVNO consultancy out of the UK. If you do a Google search on those guys and iPass, you'll actually see a press release that's gone out today around the relationship between Mobilize and iPass. It's quite an interesting partnership we have there. Okay, so to summarize, iPass is a great solution for MVNOs, be they classical MVNOs or IoT-based MVNOs. Really allows you to cost optimize the network, recover margin off the network, drive extra ARPU out of your users, and attract and retain a different, potentially different class of users onto the network, and keep those users on the network to reduce churn and increase TCV. iPass is really easy to integrate. We're already working with a whole bunch of MVNOs, and we look forward to picking up the conversation with the folks on this call and help you optimize your solution and be successful in your market. If you would like to follow up and want to know more about our solutions, you can contact myself, Neil Griffiths, at ipass.com using that email address, or you can send a generic inquiry to sales-americas@ipass.com. Do we have any questions on the chat window? Oh, okay. We have a couple of questions in the chat window. Sorry, I didn't see these come in at the time from Steve Boyle. Which vendors? A good question from Steve. Which vendors are excluded for MVNOs? That's a very good question. So we do have network carve-outs because obviously we have some of our infrastructure partners look at some types of MVNOs in certain parts of the world as competition. So they choose to exclude their coverage from being available to those MVNOs. The answer is it depends, right? So it depends largely where you're operating. In general, most times there isn't a carve-out for MVNOs. Sometimes there may be a carve-out for MVNOs because the margin of certain services might not work for you guys, like some of the in-flight offerings might be a little bit expensive for you to consume and pass on to your users. So you might carve out or restrict footprint based on the cost of it. But in general, what I would say is it depends who you are or where you're operating. For instance, if you're an IoT MVNO, I can almost categorically say there are no carve-outs or exclusions there because nobody looks at IoT as a competitive threat to their existing base. So I wish I could give you a firm answer, and it's kind of one of those things where you need a bit of a magic decoder ring to figure out. But the best bet is to get in touch with me or one of our sales folks and tell us a little bit about where you're operating and what you're going to be doing, and then we'll tell you what the footprint is that we believe you'll be able to leverage globally. I hope that answers your question, Steve. Drop me an email if you want some more information. Good. Another excellent question. Do we have any issues with running high QoS VoIP services on our network? Actually, we have a lot of success in that area. We actually are running the Wi-Fi infrastructure for at least one large global VoIP provider. They actually choose to integrate our VoIP services into their VoIP offering. On a global basis, and that's something that their users can consume to drive extra ARPU. We also have a lot of people running things like Skype for Business and Cisco Spark and a whole pile of different high QoS VoIP services over the network. But you do raise a good question there, and it's actually something that we're looking at investigating in our technology roadmap. We're looking at investigating. It is in our roadmap to actually optimize around voice over IP and high QoS applications. A little bit earlier on, I was talking about how we classify hotspots and how we determine which hotspots to connect to. Right now, we kind of are running generic QoS tests against hotspot infrastructure in real time to determine which is the best client connection, or best hotspot for a client to connect to, rather. We're going to enhance that over the next few quarters to classify hotspots in terms of, what a particular hotspot is really good at. For instance, you may have a chunk of infrastructure or a group of hotspots or an individual hotspot that has very high throughput, but the latency and the jitter may be a little bit all over the place, right? So that one may be great for Netflix, less good for voice over IP. But we may have another community of hotspots that may be visible at the same time to the same user that have much more stable jitter and latency, but the throughput is a little bit lower, so those would be more ideal for voice over IP and Skype for Business type applications. So we're looking to kind of go on to the next stage of classification and qualification of hotspots, where we can actually allow the higher level apps on the user's devices to pick what type of connectivity they would like and actually drive the underlying SDK to connect to specific types of hotspots for specific types of application. And also, we have people doing, we're talking to people about doing large-scale video distribution and voice over IP right now. So for those guys at a macro level, we would look to classify big chunks of the footprint to say, right, these ones are really good for video or audio content distribution. The rest of them are great for everything else. So yes, we're doing it right now. There's a lot of traffic on our network around voice over IP and high QoS applications, but we're looking to enhance our capabilities around that to make it even more seamless and an even better user experience for our customers. A question from Jennifer. Hello, Jennifer. Excellent question. How do you address regulatory security requirements, including PCI? So I'll talk about PCI and I'll talk about HIPAA, right? So PCI is an example. So we don't offer credit card payment on our network natively. So we don't have to, and indeed we're not PCI certified. In terms of HIPAA, we actually, I believe, are integrated into at least one, maybe two HIPAA applications around the world. We take security very, 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 very seriously indeed. There's a whole security white paper which you can get on request from us, and there's a whole security presentation, which we might do as a webinar in the future. But we have a whole multi-level approach to security that includes the ability to determine rogue hotspots, to secure login credentials, to make sure the data plane is secured, and then to do end-to-end encryption using VPN technologies, either for last mile VPN or end-to-end VPN for corporate deployments that we do. So we are very, very across all the security requirements and regulatory requirements of our customers. If you take a look at our customers, they span a huge gamut of companies that are very, very focused on security, including medical and healthcare, legal practices, consultancies, large OEMs. The list kind of goes on and on. So Jennifer, there's no one simple answer to that question. There is a whole bunch of security stuff that we can give you that explains what we do from a security perspective, because as I say, it's something we take very, very seriously. And then we could talk about how that relates to any PCI compliance that you may be interested in going forward, or HIPAA compliance, because we're having those conversations all day, every day with our customers and partners. So a question from Ryan: is the data the SDK client connects about hotspot quality available to an MVNO that integrates their app into the SDK? Yes, it is. It's an interesting question because, as I said earlier on, we're starting to understand. We built the big data cloud component of our infrastructure really to operationalize the Wi-Fi side of things. But now we're realizing, hey, there's a lot of information in there that people might want to consume. Related to not just related to network performance and QoS and whether an MVNO is getting the bang for their buck, but maybe the ability to add extra applications on there around understanding user behavior, understanding when users are connected to Wi-Fi, how they're connecting to Wi-Fi, where they're going, measuring footfall traffic in certain venues. The more you look at this data that's extracted as part of our network that's available to MVNOs, your head starts to spin in terms of the potential applications and the potential additional ARPU that you could actually generate out of selling these applications to your users. So yes, that data can be made available to our MVNO customers for their users specifically, and we're very careful about that. We also very rigidly protect the privacy of individual users. So we anonymize all the data that's stored within our big data engine, so you can't specifically identify individual users, but you can certainly see patterns. You can certainly see who's using what devices where, and who's visiting what venues, and how where your users are using the service during what times of the day. And that data is gold in terms of operating a network, because really understanding user behavior allows you to optimize around margin and figure out what your users are doing, and then meet them in the market with applications and solutions that surprise and delight them. Any other questions? Anything else that we've missed in the list? No? Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much, everybody. I've enjoyed this session. If you would like to reach out to us for more information, as I say, reach out to me, Neil Griffiths, at iPass.com, or sales-america@iPass.com, and we'd love to work with you guys to Wi-Fi enable your customers. Thank you very much. Have a great day.